Have you ever wondered why your mind feels like it's always running, never resting? Like there's a storm inside you that never quite passes? You try to be calm, try to stay positive, but something keeps pulling you back into stress, into overthinking, into this constant pressure that weighs you down. It feels like you're trapped in your own head, reacting to everything, never really in control. And no matter how hard you try, that peace you're searching for always seems just out of reach. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're human. And what you're feeling has a reason. But the truth is, you don't have to live like this. Most of us go through life without realizing how much power our minds have over our emotions. Thoughts come and go, and we chase them without even noticing. We feel anxious, angry, sad, and we react. We lash out, we shut down, we spiral. And the cycle repeats. We wake up feeling tired, go through the day feeling overwhelmed, and end it wondering why we can't just be happy. But the answer isn't about doing more. It's not about fixing who you are. It's about understanding what's happening inside your brain and learning how to work with it instead of against it. Right now, your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do: survive. It watches for threats, remembers pain, predicts danger. That's how it protects you. But in a world where everything feels urgent, that same survival system gets overloaded. Your emotions become louder. Your thoughts become faster. Your body stays tense. And slowly, that becomes your normal. But this doesn't have to be your forever. You have the ability to change the way your brain responds to life. You have the power to calm the storm. And the path begins with mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't about escaping reality. It's about meeting it fully, clearly, and without judgment. It's learning to observe your thoughts instead of being ruled by them. It's recognizing an emotion and choosing how to respond instead of reacting blindly. And when you do this, something powerful begins to shift. Your brain starts to change. Your emotions become easier to navigate. You stop drowning in the noise and start hearing your own voice again. That's not just peace, that's freedom. So why should you keep listening? Because the life you want: calm, clarity, strength that's not waiting for you in some far-off future. It starts here. It starts with understanding the emotional life of your brain and how mindfulness can transform it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. Stay with this message, because what you'll discover could change not just your mind, but your entire life. The peace you've been chasing isn't out there. It's inside you, waiting, ready. And it begins now. Your attention is the most powerful tool you have, but most people never realize how it's being used against them. Every time your mind drifts to worry, to judgment, to fear, it's feeding those emotions like fire needs oxygen. The brain doesn't just experience what you think, it strengthens whatever you repeat. Focus on stress long enough, and stress becomes your default. Replay failure in your mind, and your confidence begins to shrink. But shift your focus, and the entire landscape of your mind begins to change. This isn't just a mindset, it's biology. The brain builds pathways based on what you give your attention to. And mindfulness is the practice of choosing where that attention goes. When you start to become aware of your thoughts without diving into them, you change the game. You start realizing how many of your emotions are patterns, not truths. That fear you carry may not belong to the present moment. That anger may be an echo of something long gone. But when you're stuck on autopilot, you react to everything as if it's life or death. Mindfulness slows the loop. It lets you see with clarity. It gives you a moment, just one moment, to breathe, to notice, to decide. And that moment is everything. It's the space between falling apart and holding steady, between spiraling down and standing tall. The power of presence isn't found in silence or stillness. It's found in awareness. When you bring your attention to this exact moment, to your breath, to your body, to the ground beneath your feet, you're not just calming your nerves. You're training your brain to stay rooted. You're teaching it that this moment is safe, that you don't need to rush, that you don't need to panic. And over time, the training builds a new default, one that's grounded in peace instead of chaos. Imagine living a life where you don't feel pulled in every direction, where your mind doesn't jump to the worst case, where you can feel an emotion without it overwhelming you. That life is real, and it begins by choosing again and again to come back to now. Not the past you can't change, not the future you can't control, but this moment, this breath, this choice. You've been taught to chase happiness, to keep moving, to always fix, always fight, always achieve. But what if everything you were searching for was already within you, quietly waiting for you to slow down and notice? What if the real transformation isn't about adding more, but subtracting the noise? That's what mindfulness offers. Not an escape, not a trick, a return to presence, to power, to peace. And when you train your mind to focus on what's real, what matters, what's here, you become unstoppable. Stay with this. You're not just watching a video, you're rewiring your life, one moment, one breath, one choice at a time. Every time you return to the present moment, even for a second, you are changing your brain. That is not an exaggeration. It's a biological fact. Your brain is not fixed. It's not locked into anxiety, fear, or emotional overload forever. It's plastic. It rewires based on what you practice. And every mindful breath, every moment of awareness is practice. With repetition, the brain starts to reshape itself. The parts responsible for emotional regulation grow stronger. The circuits that trigger panic begin to quiet down. The patterns of reaction start to loosen. You're not just learning to cope, you're building a different inner world. This is how transformation begins, not through massive leaps, but through repeated, intentional choices. When you show up to the present moment consistently, your brain learns to feel safe there. And that safety spreads. Emotional storms don't last as long. Thoughts don't spiral as deeply. Your nervous system starts to regulate itself instead of constantly firing alarms. You feel it in your body first, a little more ease, a little more breath. And then you feel it in your choices. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to listen more. You begin to understand your emotions instead of being consumed by them. It doesn't mean you'll never feel overwhelmed again. Life will still challenge you. But the difference is how you meet those challenges. With a mindful brain, you face stress with steadiness. You approach uncertainty with clarity. You feel emotion without becoming it. That's emotional strength, not the absence of feeling, but the ability to hold feeling without breaking. And that strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build one mindful moment at a time. This is why mindfulness matters, not as a trend, not as a practice that only works in peace and quiet, but as a daily tool to rewire your brain into one that supports you, not sabotages you, a brain that knows how to feel without drowning, a mind that understands pain without becoming it. You don't need to escape your thoughts. You need to understand them, observe them, and gradually you become more than them. You become the calm in the chaos, the clarity in the confusion, the steady ground you've always needed. You may not see the change right away. That's okay. Growth is slow, but it's real. And the deeper you commit, the more your brain begins to shift. Not just how it works, but how it feels to live inside it. Peace isn't just possible, it's trainable. Resilience isn't just a mindset, it's a neural pathway. This is your invitation to build it. Not someday, now. In this breath, in this moment. Because your mind isn't broken, it's waiting to be led. And you are capable of leading it to something stronger, something steadier, something that lasts. Keep going. The change is already happening. There is a moment, quiet and subtle, when you begin to feel the shift. Not outside, but within. Your thoughts start to slow down, even if just slightly. Your breathing deepens without trying. And for a brief second, you feel present, not lost in the past, not rushing toward the future, but here. This is the doorway, the entry point into a new emotional experience. The more you notice it, the more it grows. This is not just awareness, it's awakening. A deep realization that your mind doesn't have to control you, that you can witness your emotions without being defined by them, that you can experience discomfort and still remain grounded in who you are. Most people live life reacting. They let emotions pull them in every direction. A sudden stress triggers panic. A passing thought becomes a storm. But when you practice mindfulness, you develop something powerful: emotional distance, not detachment, not numbness, but space. Enough space to feel fully without losing yourself. That space is freedom. Because in that space, you can choose. And choice is where your power lies. No one teaches you this growing up. No one tells you that the emotional chaos you feel isn't permanent, it's plastic. Malleable, rereadable. You don't have to stay trapped in old patterns. You can build new ones. You can teach your brain to respond with calm instead of fear, with clarity instead of confusion. That's what mindfulness trains, moment by moment, breath by breath. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need to escape your life or rearrange your entire day. You only need to notice, to come back to the breath, to feel your feet on the ground, to watch a thought without following it. Each time you do, you strengthen a different part of your brain, the part that leads instead of reacts, the part that soothes instead of spirals. And that rewiring changes everything. Not just how you feel, but how you live. You stop running from discomfort and start meeting it with compassion. You stop believing every thought and start questioning the ones that hurt. You become less controlled by emotion and more connected to purpose. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because when your mind is steady, your actions are intentional. When your emotions are understood, your energy becomes focused. You're no longer scattered. You're aligned. And alignment breeds transformation. Not a surface change, but a deep internal shift. one that radiates through how you speak, how you work, how you connect with others. Because the calmer your mind becomes, the more room there is for strength, for courage, for vision. The noise that once drowned your potential begins to fade, and what remains is the truest version of you, clear, grounded, awake. This is not the end of your journey. It's the foundation, and you're building it right now, not with force, but with awareness, not by pushing harder, but by returning again and again to the quiet center inside you that has always known the way. When you begin to feel that deeper connection within, you start noticing what truly matters. The constant pressure to perform, to impress, to achieve it begins to lose its grip. You stop chasing validation and start honoring presence. You stop trying to be everywhere for everyone and instead choose to be here for yourself. This is where true confidence is born. Not from what others see, but from what you know inside. A calm certainty, a grounded strength. And that strength grows every time you choose awareness over reaction. Every time you return to the breath instead of being pulled by emotion, you reclaim power. The emotional life of your brain is no longer a mystery once you see how it functions. It doesn't judge. It simply follows what you feed it. If you feed it fear, it builds pathways of anxiety. If you feed it anger, it sharpens its defenses. But if you feed it presence, it learns peace. If you offer it patience, it learns resilience. Your brain is always learning, always adapting, and what you repeat becomes your reality. You are not stuck. You are shaping your inner world, even now. The emotions you feel today are not permanent. They are signals, not sentences. You can hear them without obeying them. You can feel them without falling into them. This is the power of mindful awareness that gives you your mind back. As that awareness grows, your self-image begins to shift. You start seeing yourself not as a person broken by emotion, but as a person strengthened through understanding. You realize that peace isn't something you earn, it's something you access. The more you return to that space of stillness, the more it becomes your default. And from that stillness, you can build anything. A healthier mind, a deeper purpose, a more courageous life. Because nothing shakes a person who knows how to return to their center. Nothing derails someone who can sit with emotion and not run. This is where you begin to trust yourself again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned how to be present with imperfection. You stop searching for quick fixes. You stop reaching for distractions. Because you realize nothing outside you can offer the peace that comes from within. And once you taste that peace, you won't want to let it go. It's not fragile. It's not passive. It's powerful. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind of power that moves through the world with calm intensity. That's the gift of mindfulness. It returns you to yourself, to your breath, to your choice, to your strength. You're not walking toward transformation. You're living it now. Every time you choose awareness over chaos, clarity over confusion, breath over reaction, you are becoming someone new. Not someone different, someone real, someone awake. Keep going. The mind you are building is already changing the life you are living. And it's only just beginning. You start to see that peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of clarity within it. The storm may still come, but you are no longer swept away. You've anchored yourself to something deeper. You've trained your mind to stay rooted, even when everything around you is shifting. And in that steadiness, something beautiful happens. You begin to respond with intention rather than react from impulse. You begin to choose with awareness instead of chasing emotion. That space between stimulus and response becomes the ground where your power grows. And that power isn't loud. It's quiet. It doesn't scream for control. It simply refuses to be controlled. The emotional noise that once overwhelmed you begins to quiet. Not because life gets easier, but because you've gotten stronger. You don't fear your thoughts the way you once did. You don't run from your emotions. You meet them. You allow them. And they pass. Because that's the truth. No emotion lasts forever. But your ability to face it, to hold it without judgment, that is what lasts. That is what builds resilience. Every time you sit with discomfort and choose breath, instead of avoidance, you reinforce the pathways of strength in your brain. You make calm your default, not your exception. It's not about perfection. It never was. It's about honesty. Mindfulness teaches you to see what's really there. Not what you wish was true. Not what you pretend to be. But what is. And in that raw honesty, healing begins. Not because you fix yourself, but because you accept yourself. Fully. Completely. As you are. And that acceptance isn't weakness, it's courage. It's standing in front of your own mind and saying, I see you, and I'm staying. No matter how intense the emotion, no matter how loud the thought, you don't flinch, you don't retreat, you stay present. And that presence changes everything. You realize the mind doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be understood. observed, guided, with patience, with kindness. And in doing so, you become your own sanctuary, your own source of peace. You stop seeking outside validation because you found inner alignment. And with that alignment comes focus, energy, direction. You don't just feel better, you live better, more aware, more intentional, more alive. You carry that presence into everything you do, into your relationships, into your work, into your dreams. You listen more deeply. You speak more truthfully. You act with purpose instead of pressure. Because when your mind is aligned, your actions follow. And suddenly, the life that once felt chaotic becomes meaningful. The days that once slipped by unnoticed now hold value. The future that once brought fear now holds potential. You are not who you were, because your brain is not what it was. You've shaped it, strengthened it, transformed it, with nothing more than presence, awareness, and the decision to keep showing up, no matter what. That's the kind of change that lasts, and it's already alive in you. Keep breathing, keep choosing. The life you want is already forming within the mind you are training. You begin to understand that healing isn't a destination, it's a discipline, a commitment to meet yourself every single day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, especially then, because the moments that challenge you the most are the ones that change you the deepest. Not by force, but by invitation. An invitation to return to presence when your mind wants to run, to breathe when your heart is racing, to stay with the discomfort, not as a victim of it, but as a witness to its impermanence. That's the quiet revolution happening inside you. Not dramatic, not visible, but powerful beyond measure. The emotions you once feared start to lose their grip. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer define you. You feel sadness, but it doesn't sink you. You feel anger, but it doesn't consume you. You feel fear, but it doesn't stop you. This is what real strength looks like. Not the absence of feeling, but the ability to stand with feeling and not collapse. That's the resilience you're building every time you come back to your breath, to your body, to this exact moment. That's the courage that mindfulness brings, quiet, steady, unshakable. You're learning to befriend your mind instead of battling it. You're learning to sit beside your thoughts instead of trying to outrun them. You no longer seek to silence what you feel, you seek to understand it. And that shift rewires your emotional system. Your brain begins to adapt. Neural pathways once ruled by stress begin to soften. Reaction gives way to reflection. Judgment gives way to compassion. And slowly you find yourself responding to life in a new way. Not because life changed, but because you did. This is the transformation most people overlook. The one that happens beneath the surface. The one that isn't flashy but is deeply real. You don't need to broadcast it. You don't need to prove it. You simply live it. A calmer tone in your voice. A longer pause before you reply. A softer way of being, even in hard moments. That's how mindfulness shapes the emotional life of your brain. It doesn't remove your emotions. It teaches you how to navigate them gracefully, intentionally, powerfully. You start to notice the space between thought and action. And in that space, you make better choices. You don't lash out. You don't shut down. You stay open. And that openness becomes your strength. That presence becomes your power. You no longer live on autopilot. You live with awareness. And that awareness opens doors you never saw before. Possibilities, opportunities, peace. The kind that doesn't depend on circumstances but flows from within. This is your path now. Not one of control, but one of clarity. Not one of resistance, but of alignment. You are not escaping yourself, you are returning to yourself. Deeper, stronger, wiser. And every time you do, you change not just how you feel, but who you become. The life you desire isn't waiting somewhere ahead, it's unfolding with each mindful breath you take. And when you realize that each breath is a decision, everything begins to shift. Not just inside your mind, but in the way you experience the world. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to feel better. You stop searching for the outside world to fix your inside battles. Instead, you become the one who turns inward, who breathes through the storm, who listens beneath the noise. And there, in that stillness, you start to see clearly. You see that peace was never somewhere to arrive at. It was always a practice, a choice, a skill waiting to be sharpened through presence. Your brain is not a prison of old thoughts. It's a canvas waiting to be rewired. And the brush you use is your awareness. Every time you return to now, every time you observe instead of judge, every time you pause instead of panic, you're changing the structure of your emotional life. You're breaking cycles that once defined you. You're stepping away from patterns that no longer serve you. You're not just coping anymore, you're consciously creating a mind that serves your growth, not your fear. There's something deeply empowering about knowing you don't have to fight your emotions to be free. You only have to face them, not with resistance, but with compassion, not with panic, but with presence. The emotions that feel like storms are often just unprocessed waves. And when you allow them to move through, they soften, they teach, they leave space for clarity. This is emotional intelligence in its rawest form, the ability to feel fully without being ruled completely, the ability to witness what arises without turning away. And it's in that witnessing that strength is born. Because when you stop fearing your feelings, you stop fearing yourself. You begin to trust your ability to hold what's hard, to walk through what's heavy, to remain grounded even when your world shakes. That's the kind of strength that changes how you speak to yourself. You no longer criticize your pain, you cradle it. You no longer judge your fear, you listen to it. And that listening becomes your liberation. Not because the pain disappears, but because your relationship to it evolves. You don't react from old wounds, you respond from new awareness. You don't bury your emotions, you breathe through them. And with each breath, you prove something powerful, that peace is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of courage. Courage to stay, to feel, to grow. That's what changes the emotional wiring of your brain, not running from life, but standing fully in it with clarity and calm. This is where your transformation accelerates. Not through control, but through conscious acceptance. Not through avoidance, but through awakening. You are not waiting to become someone else. You are remembering who you are beneath the noise. And with every mindful breath, you return, stronger, softer, unshakably present. That's the real gift, not escape. Embodiment, not perfection, presence. You begin to realize that mindfulness is not just a practice, it is the doorway to freedom. The freedom to live beyond the automatic reactions that have held you captive for years. Every moment spent fully aware is a moment of reclaiming your power. The power to choose your response rather than be dragged by your impulses. This choice transforms the emotional life of your brain, reshaping your experience of yourself and the world. It is no longer about surviving your emotions, but mastering them. When you truly step into this reality, you step into a life where fear loses its control, anxiety softens, and your mind no longer spirals endlessly into doubt and worry. Your brain is designed to adapt, to change, to evolve. It's a living system, capable of forming new pathways with every conscious breath, and mindfulness acts as the sculptor of these pathways. With each active presence, you are carving new neural roads that lead to calm, clarity, and confidence. You are reprogramming your emotional responses so that they serve you rather than sabotage you. This is neuroplasticity at its most powerful, the ability to intentionally shape your mind's architecture. It means you are not trapped by old habits or negative patterns. You have the capacity to build a brain that reflects the person you want to be, starting right now. The transformation is subtle but profound. You may not notice it immediately, but over time you will feel a shift deep within. The frantic rush of anxiety begins to dull. The heavy weight of depression starts to lift. The constant chatter of self-criticism quiets. This is the cumulative effect of presence, the quiet strength that grows in the spaces between thought and feeling. Mindfulness rewires your brain's emotional centers, strengthening areas linked to empathy, self-regulation, and resilience. It weakens the grip of those parts that trigger stress and reactivity. This shift rewrites your emotional story at a cellular level. You become someone who faces life's challenges with steady resolve, not frantic resistance. You build emotional stamina that carries you through hardships without breaking. You cultivate a gentle but unyielding inner strength that can hold space for pain without being overwhelmed. This strength doesn't come from avoiding discomfort, it comes from embracing it fully, with awareness and acceptance. You learn that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a gateway to true courage. Mindfulness teaches you to show up for yourself in the hardest moments, and that presence becomes your shield and your sanctuary. When you embody this, everything changes. Your relationships deepen because you listen with presence, not distraction. Your work gains purpose because you act from clarity, not stress. Your dreams become attainable because your mind is focused, not fractured. The emotional life of your brain is no longer a battlefield, but a garden cultivated with care, patience, and intention. You become the gardener of your own peace, tending to your mental and emotional well-being with unwavering commitment. This is the power of mindfulness, the power to transform your brain, your emotions, and ultimately your life. You start to feel the undeniable truth that your mind is not your enemy, but your greatest ally if only you learn to work with it instead of against it. Mindfulness creates a profound partnership between your conscious self and the complex emotional landscape within. This partnership builds a foundation of trust, where you no longer fear the intensity of your emotions, but welcome them as messengers. Each feeling, no matter how uncomfortable, becomes an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. This awareness doesn't dilute the power of your emotions, it amplifies your ability to navigate them with grace and wisdom. The more you practice, the more you reclaim control over your mental state, choosing presence over panic, calm over chaos. Your brain's emotional centers respond with remarkable adaptability to this consistent presence. The amygdala, the part responsible for fear and threat detection, begins to calm down, no longer triggering overreactions to everyday stressors. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of reasoning, decision-making, and emotional regulation, grows stronger and more engaged. This neurological shift transforms your emotional life from reactive turmoil to thoughtful response. You gain the space between stimulus and reaction, and in that space, your freedom unfolds. You are no longer a prisoner to old emotional patterns, but a creator of new ones, sculpting a mind that supports resilience and peace. This process rewires your brain to favor compassion first toward yourself, then toward others. The judgment that once chained you loosens its grip. You replace harsh inner criticism with kindness, forgiveness, and understanding. This internal kindness is not weakness, it is the strongest form of self-care. It is what allows you to face your flaws without shame and your fears without avoidance. Mindfulness encourages a gentle curiosity about your inner world, and this curiosity becomes a powerful healing force. You stop hiding from your emotions and start exploring them. This exploration fosters emotional intelligence, giving you clarity and control where confusion and overwhelm once ruled. As your emotional intelligence deepens, you find yourself living with greater clarity and focus. Distractions lose their power over you because you have learned to anchor your attention in the present moment. This focus empowers you to respond to life with intention, making choices aligned with your deepest values and highest aspirations. You gain the ability to hold your emotional experiences without becoming overwhelmed or detached. Instead of being consumed by emotions or numb to them, you engage with them fully balanced, aware, and resilient. This newfound balance shapes the way you relate to the world. Your relationships become richer and more authentic because you listen with your full attention and respond with empathy. You become a source of calm and strength for those around you, not because you are perfect, but because you are present. This presence is magnetic. It draws people toward you and deepens connections. It is the quiet power of mindfulness, transforming your emotional life from chaos to clarity, from reactivity to peace, and from confusion to conscious living. You are not just surviving your emotions anymore, you are mastering them, shaping them, and growing through them. You begin to understand that mindfulness is not a passive act, but a radical form of courage. It is the bravery to face yourself honestly without retreat. When you cultivate this courage, you create a profound shift in how your brain processes emotions. The fight or flight response, once automatic and overwhelming, becomes tempered by awareness. Instead of being swept away by waves of anxiety, anger, or sadness, you learn to sit with them, to feel them fully, and then let them pass. This presence interrupts the cycle of emotional reactivity and begins to build resilience at the very core of your being. The strength you develop is not from resisting pain, but from embracing it with open arms, knowing it is temporary and part of your growth. This practice rewires your brain's default mode from one of distraction and stress to one of calm and clarity. Your neural circuits adapt, strengthening pathways that support emotional regulation and weakening those that fuel chronic stress. You gain more control over your nervous system, which governs your emotional responses. Over time, you find yourself less triggered by external chaos and more anchored in internal peace. This is a fundamental transformation because it rewrites the way you experience the world. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond thoughtfully. Instead of being controlled by fear, you move with courage. This rewiring is a gift you give yourself every time you return to awareness. With this change, the grip of old emotional habits begins to loosen. You become aware of the conditioned patterns that once dictated your reactions, the automatic fears, the limiting beliefs, the self-criticism that chipped away at your confidence. Mindfulness allows you to recognize these patterns without judgment and to choose differently. It invites you to create new habits rooted in compassion, patience, and presence. This conscious rewiring does not happen overnight. It requires commitment. But every moment spent in mindfulness is a seed planted for lasting emotional transformation. Your brain starts to embody a new story, one of strength born through awareness, peace cultivated through presence, and growth fueled by courage. As this new story unfolds, you realize your emotional life is no longer a series of unpredictable storms. Instead, it becomes a landscape you can navigate with intention. You gain the ability to hold space for your emotions without being consumed by them. You learn that emotional pain is not a signal to retreat, but an invitation to deepen your presence and expand your capacity to endure. This shift brings a profound freedom, the freedom to feel fully without fear, to be present without overwhelm, and to live with a clarity that cuts through confusion. You begin to live from this new emotional foundation every day. Your decisions become clear because your mind is no longer clouded by unconscious reactions. Your relationships grow richer because you connect with others from a place of empathy and authenticity. Your inner dialogue transforms from harsh critique to gentle encouragement. This evolution in your emotional brain is the foundation for a life lived fully, courageously, and with unwavering presence. It is the path from surviving to thriving, from reacting to responding, and from fear to freedom. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks this transformation, and with each breath you take, you move closer to the best version of yourself.